This is a Habitat Supervisor demo for April 20th, which is coincidentally 2 years after the original projected release date for Habitat. It's pretty exciting. What I'm showing you today is remote command and control of the supervisor, which is one of 3 phases of large refactoring on our way to a 1.0 of the supervisor. Specifically, these changes allow anyone as a command and control persona to remotely connect to a process supervisor and communicate with it with a request response protocol that's authenticated, meaning you don't need to influence the ring if you just want to do something like start or stop a service or ask about a service's state, things like that. So I'll get into it here. On the left, I have a Linux subsystem on Windows, and on the right, I have my Windows terminal. I've done it this way so you can see that it works cross OS, and the supervisor is going to be listening on loopback, but if I had a VM, I could turn it on and use the networking there as well. First thing I'm going to do is just start up the supervisor here. I had originally had to ask this to start a MySQL service, so that's why you see it spamming out a little bit here. I'm going to open up one more terminal and show you that. A key was written out. This is a secret key. This gets generated when the supervisor starts, and this key is used to authenticate requests from a remote supervisor. So over on my Linux machine here, I'm going to ask the status of all the services. So I get this error that the secret key is different because I have had already set a secret key here to a previous version. So to set up a new one, this is what I had set up. Sure, we'll set up a default origin, that's core. I want to set up a default access token. There's a new option. Do you want to set up a control gateway secret? I'm going to say yes. And let's pump a new one in. And now my CLI is configured to communicate appropriately with this running supervisor. I run status, I get the status. Well, the point here is that this key is shared among a group of supervisors. So you could generate a new key. This word, have subsecret generate. You take that, and part of your provisioning, when you drop the supervisor off, you just write this out to that CTL gateway secret. That will cause the supervisor not to automatically generate one, and instead this will be shared amongst all the supervisors, kind of like if you're an Erlang programmer, how the Erlang cookie works. If you look at the commands here, you'll see that a lot of them now have this remote sup or -r flag. This is by default connected to loopback, and it connects to a TCP port. So all this traffic is going over a TCP connection. Some of the reason this is important is we can do validation on configurations as well now. So if I look at the apply command, and let's try to let's just write some crap data here. I'm gonna write it to MySQL default. Just give us a version number of 100 because I don't know what's in the ring. Apply it. You'll see that it happily applies this configuration, but I now get this error. There's an unknown key, my key. That's because the MySQL configuration doesn't understand what my key is. So if I ask the config, let's see. I ask for the configuration of the package, what its default configurations are. This is also will eventually be known as an interface. You'll see that there's no value for my key in here. But if I change this to instead be, let's say, port, and we apply this configuration, it goes just fine. And that's because it was able to validate that configuration just fine. On the right, you'll see that the supervisor is receiving these commands and it's outputting information. These are completely running independently. And this is a first phase to a second phase, which is a synchronous supervisor. So now that we have the ability to communicate over a TCP channel and do command and control this way with a request response protocol, now we can set up a request, allow the supervisor to continue doing some work that it's doing, pick up that request, process it, and it will interact with the actual main loop of the supervisor. Prior, we were doing inter-process communication through a file, and that's just wrong. It was a shortcut to get where we needed to be, but we were unable to interact with the flow of the supervisor. Instead, you would write a file and you'd wait for the supervisor to pick it up. So you could only set desired state. You couldn't actually say, do this and wait for it. Another minor change here, but a pretty good UX change is, well, I'll show you start and stop first. So if you stop a service, it stops, obviously, the running service. If I start it, it'll start it back up. Prior, if you had tried to run start, this would have started a supervisor. That behavior was confusing for people because run is what starts a supervisor. Start, it's just supposed to be for command and control, but we were overloading it so that way we could preserve some behavior that we originally launched with over 2 years ago, which is people wanted start to start the supervisor and not just start a package. But once we added multi-tenant supervisor, it didn't make much sense anymore. So you can now pass to the run command a number of flags which would work with load. Load is how you have a supervisor take a package and make it a service inside of itself and start it. And this will allow you to seed a supervisor with a initial service. So if I just run it with core MySQL, you'll see it was doing that already, but I don't have any, I don't know of another Windows package to run right now, so that's why you see me run MySQL. But run takes the place of start, so we've also simplified the UX there quite a bit. Next steps here are a little bit more refactoring, cleaning things up, and then diving into powering the entire main loop with a reactor, condensing on one thread instead of the multiple threads that we have, and just further refactoring of our concurrency model. Looking forward to it. This work here should be out in a release pretty soon. We've got a couple things to solve with our release process to get this out, but we're really excited to push this out. I think that there's a persona that we haven't identified yet, which is not a developer, and they are just an operator who's a command and control operator that isn't going to be building software and isn't going to be developing software, so they don't need the studio, they don't need the supervisor. But what they will be doing is communicating with a ring and trying to manage the various peers of it. As we move into trying to monetize Habitat, eventually there's going to be a command and control interface for this, some way to visualize the contents of a ring, and I think this will be used heavily with that. Validating this through a different mechanism than the ring key is a part of that as well. We want to separate our concerns. So, operators don't need to have direct access to writing directly into the ring. You need to expose that through a tool, like a web app. So that's it. Thanks for watching, guys.